Hi, welcome to this week's Preps Preview. I'm Justin Conn. This is Scott Richey. We're going to talk a lot about the Macon County Tournament, which, of course, just finished up. Scott, it's funny because I think that I know less about the county now than I did before that, because it was one of those things. I think that what we see is there's going to be a lot of parity and there's going to be a lot of unexpected results in games involving county teams, and probably all of the OCAW and Little OCAW this year for sure.
Well, and going into the tournament, you kind of have some preconceived notions and ideas about what these teams are going to be, and then you get your first look at them, and maybe a second, or a third, and you start to see things maybe you didn't expect, both good and bad, and it changes kind of how you see the teams in 3 days worth of games.
Yeah, I agree. I just want to throw a few teams out there and we'll just kind of talk a little bit about them. Of course, Warrensburg Latham is the champion. Definitely unexpected. I believe they were the 4 seed going into the tournament. Of course, they have they're basically right now playing 4 sophomores a lot, along with a junior and a couple of seniors, and it's a mix. That. You're going in, you're like, well, they're probably another year away from really competing in this, and then they go in and they beat Cerro Gordo Bement. They upset St. Teresa in a game that it seemed like St. Teresa was in control of for a while. Then they come out of nowhere and win it, and then they just their defense just dominated Argenta in the championship. And there were times when Warrensburg struggled offensively, in that tournament, but the defense, was really, I thought, the key to that, the winning that championship for them.
Yeah, I mean, offensively, in the St. Teresa game, the first half, Warrensburg's going to be pretty methodical in what it does offensively, and it seemed like things weren't, they're just moving as fluid as they can be, because there's still some fluidity, in a methodical offense, but it just seemed kind of stagnant. And then Austin Tucker, he just doesn't miss in the second half, hits, I think, 5 threes. So, I mean, that kind of is just a huge turn from what had happened in the first half. But you're right, defensively, they shut down Christian Williams in the second half. He was almost a non-factor, which is a sentence I'm not sure I thought I'd say this year. And then, like you said, against Argenta, I mean, their 1-2-2 just befuddled them, I guess. I mean, I was kind of following along on your Twitter updates, so just waiting for Argenta to make their first shot.
I think going forward for Warrensburg, I think it's probably a little premature to get too excited and say, okay, this is the team that's going to win the OCAW this year and go out and dominate. I think that it's not quite ready for that yet. I think like we said, offensively they have some issues to work out, and Vic Binkley even said as much afterwards. They don't have, Tucker had a big game, but I don't know that he's that guy every night for them. I think they don't have a lot of size right now, and I think that inside, Shea can get him points, but he's only like 6'6". I think that they're going, they're going to struggle offensively. I think, defensively, Vic Binkley is great at making adjustments in that 1-2-2, but I think most coaches will tell you a press is more effective early than it is later in the year. And I think as teams, I think the next time Argenta plays them, they won't struggle that badly against it. They'll get better against it, even though Argenta, and we'll talk a little bit about them. They do have some issues with not necessarily having that ball handling guard that can just beat the press by himself. But you don't always need that. If you make the right passes and pass and cut, which they weren't doing. So I do think that Warrensburg definitely can't just go, okay, we're here now. I think they have some work to do. I think as surprising as Warrensburg's run was, I thought Argenta, I was more surprised by what they did, honestly. I think, they just have not been a competitive team in this and for a long time. And this group, with Eller and McCood, I mean, the last couple of years we thought, well, maybe this is the year, and then it just never happened. And so, you bring in Tom Sanchez as your coach, and all of a sudden, McCood's probably the best post player in the OCAW.
Yeah,
teams are going to have to. Every team's going to go in, looking to stop him, and then you have Connor Damery and Gage Eller who are good enough. They did not play well against Warrensburg, but those guys are good enough that they're going to beat you on nights if you put everything you have into guarding McCood. And
something that both Tom Sanchez and Keegan Wood said after they beat Meridian, they said Sanchez said this is a team that guys that have good athletes that have played on good baseball teams, good athletes that have played on good football teams, And now maybe they have some good athletes that are going to be playing on a good basketball team. And Keegan also said it's nice to see them be a winning basketball team again. So I think that's kind of in the back of their minds that they know that they can have a successful team this year. And it's just maybe getting over that kind of the last few years where they maybe thought the same thing and had some disappointing results. And so they have to at this point in the season they're doing some things right. They're 5-1. That's a much better start than they've had the last few years. And Keegan's game against Meridian, 37 points, 20 rebounds, was one of the best I've seen. He was 12 of 20 from the field. He hit some threes. Perfect at the free throw line when no one else in that game was making their free throws. He had a great game, and it was. If he can kind of he's not going to keep up that kind of production for a year, but if he can have those games every once in a while, he's going to draw the attention. And guys like Gage Eller, who struggled with his shot a little bit in the tournament, he's not going to be that bad shooting the rest of the year.
It's funny because I think something we've said, and I've heard other people say about Argenta over the years, and I actually talked about this with Tom Sanchez a little bit, is they weren't basketball players. They were football players and baseball players trying to play basketball. And I think what Sanchez has done well here with these guys is say, okay, let's just take advantage of your athleticism. Maybe you're not a guy whose first sport is basketball, though I think Damery is a guy who's kind of changes that a little bit. But with McHood and Eller and Jesse Brown, those guys, just say, hey, let's just take advantage of your athleticism. Let's not worry about you being, your footwork being perfect or this being perfect or that being perfect. Let's just, Keegan McHood's a big boy who's got a pretty nice shooting touch. Let's find a way to make that work. And hey, so far so good for them. And it's good to see. And it's the OCA's always been so full of great coaches, and now when you add Sanchez in there, it just makes it that much more fun. I know for us personally to deal with this conference in general, just because it's just like I said, always been full of great coaches with Blick and Binkley and Chad Kluver and Tom Noonan, and now we have Sanchez, who I hadn't previously known as a basketball coach, but I think you can pretty much say this guy can just coach, flat out coach.
And I mean, you also have guys like Kevin Roy and Monticello, and it kind of extends conference wide. And there's also some pretty good players that make these teams go.
Absolutely. I think St. T obviously they got upset by Warrensburg. The game they played against Meridian on the next night started out offensively a little bit slow in that one, but what I saw in the second half from them kind of made me think, okay, what we thought at the start is true. This is the best team in the OCA. I really believe that. When Christian Williams was just taking the ball to the basket, he just got the ball and said, "Here, stop me, stand in front of me, go ahead," and nobody did. And I think, if he plays like that, and then you have him, John Radley and George Duncan hitting the boards, and J.D. Mattingly as well. If you can get have Madison Velchek hit some outside shots, and Christian's going to score all over the floor. Boy, I just don't. And I talked to Sanchez a little bit about this. How do you guard them? Who's going to stop those guys? And I just think going forward, I think that they learned their lesson from that loss. I was impressed by the way they bounced back. They didn't let it ruin the rest of the tournament for them. That they bounced back and played great against Meridian. And I really do think as the year goes forward, we're going to see St. T. That St. T that we saw against Meridian and not the one we saw against Warrensburg going forward.
Well, it was almost two distinctly different halves against Warrensburg. The first half, Christian did some of those same things that he did against Meridian. He was taking the ball to the basket, and if he kind of got stopped halfway there, he'd hit a pull-up jumper. And the second half, he scored 5 quick points, and St. Teresa missed 7 straight shots while Austin Tucker was kind of going on his 3-point binge. And those 7 straight shots, I mean, it was one shot from Christian. I just think, and this will go against maybe some people that think, basketball is a team game, and it is. It takes 5 guys, out there to, playing well together, but sometimes you have to have the ball in the hands of, your number one guy. And I don't think he had the ball in his hands enough in the second half with the game kind of slipping away. I mean, there was no one really on Warrensburg that's going to stop him cold.
Right.
I mean, his athleticism and his size as a 6'5" guard, either you put a bigger, slower guy on him, or you sacrifice some size and go with someone that can at least keep up, and then he'll just shoot over them. I mean, there's not a lot of people in the OCA that can match up with him, and just sometimes you just have to let him go, let him be free and do whatever he wants on the court because he's going to do it.
Just a couple other quick thoughts. Brock Snarski came back from the ankle injury, or I believe it was an ankle or foot injury, and had 2 monster scoring games. And I think he's going to score a ton of points this year. I don't know. I imagine he's going to lead the county in scoring. Then you have Sarah Gorda-Bement, who won the consolation title. They have Connor Gross, who's going to score a ton of points. So there's some players that we saw in this tournament that we thought that's who those guys were, and they were in this tournament. I think they will be going forward. I think I will put money on those 2 guys will be the guys that lead the county in scoring, and probably shots taken as well.
I'd say that's a safe bet. Both of them, they're just confident that they can make any shot on the court, and that's sometimes what you need. I mean, Brock playing his first game back against Argenta, there wasn't a shot he didn't like, and he topped 30 points. So obviously he did something with his attempts.
I think Meridian's I think they're 2-4 right now. I think they're a much better team than that. I think that they'll compete in the OCA. I honestly do believe that. Want to shift gears a little bit to the things we have coming up. It's funny because it was a little bit of a light weekend with the snow, and then now with Christmas coming up, it's a little bit of a light week ahead of us. So this is the one lull you really get in the basketball season. That kind of and with the way things shape up with football ending and basketball starting right up, and then pretty much nonstop basketball from after Christmas till March. This is our one chance to maybe take a quick gasp of breath. But we do have some good games coming up this weekend. I'm going to talk a little bit real quick about Effingham traveling to Mount Zion. A couple definitely contrasting styles there. Mount Zion wants to score a lot of points. They want to put up a ton of threes and make it a sort of. It's almost like I know Ryan Brown came before Mike Popovich did, but there's definitely right now in Mount Zion a play fast mentality on with football and in basketball now too. And then you have Effingham, who's going to come in and with Ron Reed, they're going to play a defensive style, a deliberate style. So that'll definitely be a game where pace, whoever can control the tempo, will have the advantage. And the Apollo, I don't know that there's a team that you say, okay, I know Matt Toombs played pretty well here early, but I don't know that there's a team where you say, okay, they're going to win this. So there's going to be a lot of jockeying for position early, and this is a big one to get some early position in the Apollo Conference. And
then Saturday, kind of get out of the county a little bit. KZ Westfield is playing at Teutopolis, and you're talking about Connor Gross, Brock Snarski being some pretty good scorers around this area. Brandon Wolf at KZ Westfield outside the area is probably one of the obviously one of the better players, definitely one of the better scorers, but he'll have a tough time against T-Town. I saw a lot of them when I used to work in Effingham, and said then, and I will still say now, probably one of the best defensive teams and programs under Andy Fehrenbacher that I've seen. And they just do the little things on defense, like their help defense is almost always where it needs to be. Good ball pressure. I mean, they will give Brandon Wolf fits, and it should be kind of interesting to see that matchup to see, because if T-Town can slow down Wolf, I think he's kind of what makes KZ go, has been at least the last couple of years. It should be an interesting game for sure.
And I know KZ, wants to play better defense this year with Jason Hansen now coaching them. So that'll be, and they kind of flunked their first big test when they got beat by Marshall. I know he wasn't happy with the way they played. So this is now, another big test, and there's probably not a bigger one on their schedule than T-Town. Want to shift gears a little bit and just kind of talk about the girls basketball a little bit. Just kind of throw out some teams. Every year we just talked about some Effingham area team in Teutopolis, and we talked about Effingham. Right now they're the three kind of Effingham girls teams, Effingham High, St. Anthony, and T-Town are all undefeated. And they kind of take their cue from the boys' side too, and they play some great basketball there. St. Anthony and T-Town play this week, so somebody's going to lose. And the way T-Town girls have played early in the season, I don't know that there's going to be a lot of teams that beat them. Period. So definitely, though, I know Effingham also plays Mount Zion this week, so for the second time, and Mount Zion struggled against them offensively the first time, and I think a lot of teams struggle against Effingham offensively.
And bring it a little closer to home. Central A&M, they've taken a few lumps this year in the Painted tournament. They played some tough teams, Bree Central, girls who are consistently one of the better 2A teams in the state. But Taylor Jordan is kind of fully healthy at this point. She had 19 points in a game recently, kind of her best game of the season. And Coach Tom Dooley said it was nice to kind of see her back at full strength. And with a pretty young team at A&M, she's, I think, is kind of maybe the glue that holds it together. She's got the most experience, and if Taylor's fully healthy and you mix in some of the younger players like Ryan Dooley, Mika Maples, Kaylee Hennings, I think that's a team that will only get better as the season goes. And the game that Taylor scored 19 in, Central A&M topped 90 as a team. So obviously, when you're doing that, you're doing a lot of things right offensively.
It's a big week for A&M. They have Maroa this week, and also they play on Saturday. They host Nokomis in a battle of a couple of teams that were ranked in the preseason, and a couple of teams that need kind of that signature win to say, hey, we are for real a state-ranked team. So that should be a good one. Like I said, it gets a little lighter this week, but we'll still have all the coverage. Of course, you can play Pick'em. Also, check us out on HR Preps on Twitter, on Facebook, and online as well. We'll see you out there.